Dan Lanning took over a pretty nice little recruiting situation at Oregon from Mario Cristobal and seems to have, despite the transition and all the issues that come with it, off to a good start rolling toward 2022. We got Eric Scopel on the line from Duck Territory on 247 Sports. Please like the video, share these videos out on social media, and subscribe. Eric, good to see you. How you doing?
Doing all right. Busy week, signing period. This always is fun, and Oregon got some stuff done.
Absolutely. Appreciate you being here. As we size up the class, you let me know before we started to record that speed, of course, you can't teach speed, and college football has always, coaches love or enamored with speed for obvious reasons, but especially in today's game, you have to have it.
Ducks went and got some track speed, and I think anybody who knows what Oregon stands for in terms of its athletics knows that runs hand in hand with what the program has represented for a while, and Oregon went out and signed. This is pretty notable from Dan Lanning. 15 signees, but 5 of them have run 10.7 or faster in the 100 meters, which is fast, which is very, very fast. And three in the secondary at corner: Jaleel Tucker, Jaleel Florence, Kamari Terrell, all 10.7 100-meter times in track. And then a couple of linebackers, Devon Jackson, Harrison Taggart, have run sub 10.7. And I think the fact that you have a 210-pound linebacker in Jackson who's run 10.54 in the open 100 before is really notable. And I think you think about the way Dan Lanning's defense played at Georgia and just the inability teams had to get off tackle, or the plays that were made in the screen game, because the Bulldogs are really, really fast running sideline to sideline. Oregon, at least kind of initial, I think, thoughts on this class are you've got some guys that can go out there and do that. I don't know if that happens day one. A lot of these guys, I think, are, I don't want to say projects, but probably aren't playing a ton of football in 22. But down the line, you can kind of see what Dan Lanning is looking for in this cycle. Speed is definitely the name of the game.
Eric, when you think speed, you think position players, but that's or skill position players, and that's not necessarily the case. When you think speed at Oregon, you also discard the line play. But Mario Cristobal turned this into a line-heavy, especially on the offensive side of the ball, program. And you're a bit concerned, as others are, in regards to having volumes of skill position, high-end talent at those skill position sets.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I think that, and I know I might have talked about it on your show as well, Mark. Just like I felt like Oregon was going to go heavy running back receiver this cycle, and they didn't. You look at what they brought in. They brought in 2 players that play running back or wide receiver in total. In running back Jordan James, which was a big signing day flip from Georgia. One of, I think, the most impressive parts of this cycle was getting that commitment. Oregon really needs running backs. They only have 3 returning at scholarship. James probably comes in as a chance to play right away. And then at receiver, Oregon's lost a ton to graduation, to transfer, to the NFL. I would say 4 of the team's top receivers during the course of the season are no longer with the team going in 2022. I thought, and I think the previous staff thought this way too, because they went out and had verbal commitments from 4 of them, that Oregon would go pretty wide receiver heavy in 2022. And that was not the case either. They only signed 1, and that was in-state prospect Justice Lowe. Out of Lake Oswego. And I like his game a lot too. I just was a little surprised maybe in the lack of skill position players signed there. And, we asked Lanning a little bit about, okay, is there more need for running back? And he said something that was kind of interesting, because obviously the portal's there. They could go out there and find a guy or 2. But he did say that don't be surprised maybe to see them get creative on offense. He kind of noted that just because we only have 4 quote unquote running backs doesn't mean we don't have other ways or other players that can play in the backfield. He noted you could see receivers maybe filling in back there. So kind of an interesting, I think, dynamic with this class is you look at it, 15 signees, I think 10 are on defense, 5 are on offense, but of those 5 on offense, 3 are offensive linemen. The Ducks didn't sign a quarterback, which traditionally you like to do each cycle, and they only signed 1 running back and 1 wide receiver. A little bit different from most cycles, but clearly they feel confident in getting that to work. I just was a little surprised because especially at running back and receiver, I think they have like a combined 11 or 12 players brought back at those 2 positions. I kind of thought they would go a little heavier this cycle.
We got Eric Scopel on the line talking Ducks. You can catch his complete work at Duck Territory there on 247 Sports. And it is 247 that ranks Oregon at number 3 in the Pac-12, number 25 in college football. Eric, when you look down the list, obviously people gravitate to the guys with the highest ranking and the most stars next to their name. But is there a player or 2 or 3, however far you want to take it, that intrigue you?
I think there's quite a few guys that are interesting. Oregon went out and, as you said, they got some 4-star recruits. And then again, you don't have a top 25 class nationally, which I think is quite an accomplishment, by the way, considering the context of what Dan Lanning went through without having some blue chippers. But I look at a couple of guys on the lines. I think Michael Wooten as an offensive tackle projects to be somebody who can be a difference maker at some point. I don't think that's right away. I don't think it needs to be right away, which is the luxury you have with returning, your 6 or 7 of your top offensive linemen from a year ago. I think at some point that Wooten could be a guy who is your left tackle or your right tackle, depending on how he develops. I'm not talking 22, probably 23, but he's intriguing. He's got great length, athleticism. He's got good feet for a big guy. And again, just kind of a middling 3-star recruit by I guess national standards. So I think that's one to watch. Anthony Jones, who was a late addition that signed back in December, an edge player who I believe was already enrolled. Pretty intriguing. Was a guy that they kind of got in on late, flipped him from Texas. Big, athletic, moves well. And then his high school teammate, Sir Mells, is another guy in the front 7. They both played at Liberty High School in the Las Vegas area. 6'5", 300-something pounds, big interior body. I know, speaking with Sir, that Dan Lanning kind of pitched him on being a Georgia-like interior defensive lineman, with just the big body and frame. And that's a challenge sometimes out west, is finding bodies like that, just because, to be frank, the Southeast has more of them and probably better players at that position group. So if Mells can develop from, again, kind of a middling 3-star recruit into somebody who can be a contributor, that's a big victory. And I think I'll look forward towards the next couple of years is how Oregon recruits interior defensive linemen. Is Dan Lanning able to have some success in the Southeast? And Tosh Lupoy, who obviously have experience down there. Tony Tuioti was at Nebraska. Does he have some experience maybe in the Texas, Oklahoma, the Southwest? Can have some ties down there? Because frankly, it's outside of Los Angeles and sometimes Seattle and Salt Lake City, there's just not a lot of big time interior defensive linemen. And I thought Oregon did a good job with getting some guys this cycle, but going forward, it'll be interesting to see kind of where they target those players.
Devin Jackson's the guy at the top of the board. He's got a top 150 ranking overall at linebacker, top 12 at his position, first-rated player in the state of Nebraska. Oregon going out to Nebraska. They've made some ties out there, and they went to Omaha for Devin Jackson. Give us a little bit on Devin Jackson.
Yeah, I mentioned him a moment ago. He's the guy who runs 10.54 in the 100. So speed, athleticism. He and Harrison Taggart, the 2 linebacker commits, are both really, really fast. I think that's attractive. I think Devin Jackson reminds me a little bit of a current Oregon linebacker, and that's Adrian Jackson, who's been kind of a specialty player to this point. I think everybody's been kind of waiting for Adrian to emerge as a star, and maybe that doesn't happen, but maybe Devin Jackson's the one that does. Kind of similar body types, frames. Both have played coming into Oregon, are going to play linebacker, but had been playing a little bit of defensive back, a little hybrid, and both have great speed and wheels. So I like Devin Jackson a lot. I don't think he's probably much of an immediate contributor just because Oregon brings back some really, really talented linebackers. But again, this is a recruit who down the line, probably 23 and 24 and beyond, could be a starter and could be a really good player.
And then we've got, you've alluded to July Tucker. You've also mentioned Jalil Florence, 2 top 20 cornerbacks. A little bit more on those 2 guys.
I think if there's a position group Oregon really addressed, it was corner. Those 2, Jalil Tucker, Jalil Florence, and then also Kamari Terrell out of Texas. 3 bigger, rangier corners, 6 foot, 6'1", 6'2", I think in Florence's case, all about 180 pounds, long limbs. But again, run 10.7 in the 100, pretty quick. I think the ball skills really impressed me with Jalil Florence. That was, I would say probably one of the bigger signing day additions. I got his commitment on Monday. He had been a commitment previously, same high school as Jalil Tucker. The 2 Jalils are very close. So it kind of had felt like for a while they'd probably both end up sticking with Oregon, considering they'd both been long-term commitments. But you never know. And Oregon had to fight USC, which is, of course, a little bit revamped now with Lincoln Riley there. And Dante Williams is still there as the corners coach, is one of the best recruiters, not just in Southern California, but one of the better recruiters nationally. I thought that was a big win. But I think all 3 of those guys project as corners, but I could kind of see, especially with Florence, maybe a little bit of a hybrid role there. He reminds me of Javon Holland, a former Oregon Duck who's now in the NFL making plays. Just go watch their tape. They're both similar size, similar movement skills, both really explosive with the ball in their hands. I wouldn't be surprised if Florence is somebody who sooner than later is a return guy, kickoff or punt. He had, I think, 4 combined punt/kickoff returns for touchdowns last year at Lincoln. So That's a player I'm really high on. And then Tucker and Terrell are similar. I think what Oregon has done the last couple of cycles is gone out and found bigger, rangier corners, and that seems to be kind of the mode, I guess, the body type they're looking for. And the three that they signed this year certainly fit that. Not to mention the fact that Oregon needed corners this cycle.
Getting our Ducks take from Eric Skopel. You can catch the complete look that he provides on 247 Sports Duck Territory. We appreciate Eric being here, breaking down the recruiting class, National Signing Day, 2 days in the rearview mirror, 25th ranked in the country. And as Eric alluded to, got to consider Dan Lanning had about 2 less weeks than a typical transition coach, which is that's difficult in and of itself. Plus they're playing ball 2 weeks later than everybody else, and he's splitting the work, and obviously he got the job done pretty well for the Georgia defense and winning a national championship. And of course that's that's that week 1 affair that's going to be so intriguing. Eric, I know it might be a little early to ask this question, but early feel on what Dan Lanning does different than Mario Cristobal, not just in regards to recruiting, but maybe how he may approach the job a little bit differently.
I think there's going to be similarities in terms of strengths. Obviously, both are very good recruiters. I think both, from what we've heard, connect really well with players and with recruits. I think a thing that stood out, I know Oregon obviously was hit by the transfer portal. I know I came on here and talked about Travis Dye's departure, which was really disappointing. But collectively, I think 3 different players that had entered the portal, Lanning was able to talk out of staying in the portal. And that sort of stood out to me. It wasn't just the recruiting he did to conclude this class. It was the recruiting he did to kind of keep the team in place, if you will. Obviously, the thing that I think people are curious about is offense, because Mario Cristobal was an offensive line coach. Dan Lanning's background is in defense. Oregon hasn't had a defensive-minded coach since Rich Brooks. It's been almost 20 years, or more than 20 years, I think. Close to 30 years. Gosh, I'm getting my times wrong here. Since they've had a defensive-minded head coach. And so I think you expect defense to be a priority. You saw that in this cycle. Again, 10 out of 15 being defensive players. I think offensively, we had an opportunity to hear from offensive coordinator Kenny Dillingham. He's 31, really young guy, about his offensive vision. And it sounds like it's going to be an offense that moves quicker. And by quicker, I mean more plays, maybe a little more tempo. Talked a lot about it being kind of a pro style that moves fast, that want to, I guess, get in 80 plays per game, which is moving. I don't think a single team in the country did that this year. So I think offensively you might see a little bit of a difference from past years in terms of the aggressiveness. That doesn't necessarily mean, schematically you're running a pro style. I think people think under center, maybe a tight end every down, what you see traditionally from like the mid 90s, like a West Coast offense, Bill Walsh or something like that. I don't think that's what he means by pro style, but I do think offensively Oregon will look a little differently. And I guess just another thought I've had kind of looking at the way Dan Lanning has operated here is he does seem, not that Mario Cristobal wasn't using or utilizing social media to its fullest, maybe. Lanning seems to be a little bit more bought into that even than what Mario Cristobal was, how he kind of bought into it. And I think that makes sense when you look at just the age difference there. Dan Lanning being 35 years old, Mario being in his mid 40s. That youthful, I think, aspect of things will be, I think, interesting to follow and see some of those differences going forward. And I think one thing on the social media that kind of stood out to me that I don't know if others have noticed is the marriage of Oregon and Nike as brands. You see the Nike Just Do It symbol on a lot of social media stuff. Years ago, that would have been questionable to do that, but with the new NLI stuff, you kind of, maybe it's worthwhile to play up the connection with Nike. Everyone already says Oregon's Nike U. Well, let's just accept that and move on with it. And that seems like something Lanning's been more comfortable doing than Cristobal.
Absolutely. Rich Brooks, he took Oregon to a Rose Bowl in 1995, and that was well before Oregon was Oregon, meaning Oregon that everybody thinks about with the flash and the Nike and everything included. Good stuff with Eric Skopel. Catch his work there at Duck Territory on 247 Sports. Eric, we appreciate you stopping by as always.
Of course, anytime. I'm sure we'll be talking something soon. Spring football, mid-March for Oregon. Maybe that'll be a time to talk.
I was going to ask you that. Yeah, we'll track you down before that. Get a little spring preview. Sounds good, Eric.